welcome to this conversation presented by White House Custom Color. I'm Jed Toffer. Thanks for listening. You know, my wife Vicky and I have owned and operated our photography studio, V Gallery, for 20 years now. White House has been our lab for the last 16 of those years, and we could not be happier. White House is a family-run business, just like ours. If you haven't already, check them out at whcc.com. And if you want to drop me a line, feel free to email me at jed@whcc.com. Honest and genuine. That's how I would describe Leslie Kerrigan. She's a no-nonsense Southern girl from South Carolina. She's a wife, a mother, a photographer, a founder, an entrepreneur, and more. Leslie chose to photograph high school seniors after noticing that nobody else in her market was doing so. Then she created a market from scratch. Here's how she did it. You want to use your radio voice?
I know, right? I don't know that I have a radio voice. I might have a radio face, but I don't know about a radio.
That's perfect. That's me. That's why I do this. And everyone's like, no. Are you going to video the No.
No, absolutely not.
That would not.
I want to be in my pajamas if I can.
We want people to actually tune in and listen. So here we are at Conference 12 in Chicago, 2018. And I'm with Leslie Kerrigan, the founder of Conference 12 and Seniorology too.
Yep.
What else do people use to introduce you when they're talking to you about fancy stuff?
What else? I mean, photographer, seniorology, blogger. I've spoken at lots of stuff, teacher.
So you're kind of a big deal. Is what
I don't know about that,
that's how
but I've done some stuff. How about
come
that?
in hot
Creative Live.
Have you done Creative Live?
Yeah.
Oh,
WPPI, Creative Live.
Oh. Let's do the whole who are you and where are you from and all that
well,
stuff.
if you can't tell, I'm from the South.
Mm-hmm. I was
which I'm sure
up.
on any sort of taping of my voice is super Southern sounding.
You sound mildly Southern, yes.
Yes. So South Carolina, born and raised. I grew up in a very small town called Hartsville, which is near Myrtle Beach, which most people have heard of.
Close to the beach.
Close to the beach.
Nice.
An hour inland.
Okay.
So I grew up there. And then now I live in Greenville, South Carolina,
yes.
which is the upper part of the state.
Yes.
It's a little further away from the coast, but
right.
South Carolina's small, so you can pretty much get anywhere in about a couple hours.
Do you know Need to Breathe, the band Need to Breathe?
No, I don't.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
I need to look them up.
They're big South Carolina boys.
Okay.
A couple of brothers.
Okay.
And an old
I know
high school
Hootie
friend.
and Darius.
Well, I don't. I'm not.
I was like in college when they were trying to make it. You're not a fan?
At all.
Oh, man.
I would honestly say that I can't stand them.
Awesome.
I'm sorry.
I don't care. It's fine with me.
I hope you don't take it personally.
No,
it really has
it's
nothing
fine.
to do with you or your beautiful state. But
right. No, it's totally fine.
I can't listen to him.
Well, I went to college and they were still a college band at my
huge.
college. So
they were huge. Do you know they have the 9th best-selling album of all time?
No. Hold my hand?
That
one.
Their big one. That was the big one,
that was
right?
the big one.
See, I try to black it all out,
right.
but I was
because you hate them.
I do. I was reading a list the other day, and it's like Zeppelin.
I would never have guessed.
Floyd, and of course Michael Jet Thriller's on there.
Right.
You know, I know it's because the Eagles have like number 1 and number 3 now.
Right.
They beat Thriller finally, for some reason, and. Hootie and the Blowfish are number 9.
I
it's
can't
like
believe it.
all these legends, and then
right.
Hootie's in there.
And they lived right down the street from me in college. All of them, the whole band.
Oh, so the fellas were right there.
Yeah.
I knew they were from that area, but well, kudos to all of you guys.
So anyway, Southern.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Let's see. I actually went to school for journalism.
Oh, where at?
At South Carolina.
Okay.
Go Gamecocks.
Yeah,
yes,
right.
go Gamecocks.
Right.
Diehard fan.
Right.
Even though we suck.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's all right.
You've had good years here and there.
They're here and there. But, I'm dedicated. I've been to every game that we lost those 2 seasons of Lou Holtz. So, I'm ready.
You're not a fair weather fan.
No, I'm not a fair weather fan. I might be drunk the whole time, but I'm there. Just kidding.
You do whatever you got to do to soothe.
You got to tailgate. You just have to tailgate. You go for the tailgating, not the football.
I understand. Sure.
So, yes, I actually have a degree in journalism. Which I didn't do a lot with. But maybe is where the blogging came in. I would assume.
I was going to say.
Yeah,
I was going to say. I bet you're using those skills.
Yeah, probably. But so I started out actually working in. This is funny. My only real job. I like to say my only real job because the only job I have where I went to an office, to me, that's real. I mean, not that I don't currently have a real job, but you know what I mean? Like I don't have to go anywhere. But I started out working in, my hometown is headquarters to a paper company called Sunoco.
Okay.
And so
I had to say Dunder Mifflin, but I was like, well, you had to work for Dunder Mifflin.
No,
that's
Sunoco.
the only paper company.
That's the only one you know.
Right.
Well, anyway, so Sunoco is headquartered in my hometown, and I worked there in the inside sales department. My soon-to-be husband had a cubicle across from me.
You're like Jim and Pam.
So, yes, we are Jim and Pam. That's exactly right.
Amazing.
Yep. We were friends for like 3 years. I used to complain about my horrible boyfriend to him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was he also working at the paper company in the warehouse, perhaps?
Yes. It was Jim and Pam.
This is too
I'm telling you. I know. So eventually I got rid of the jerk and
that's what she did.
Right. Yep. And then we got married and I had to live in Indiana for a while. And let me just tell you, a South Carolina girl in a landlocked state does not work.
That had to be rough.
It was rough.
Indiana.
So he was getting his master's at Purdue.
Okay.
So I worked in Lafayette, which is the worst place. Well, Terre Haute's probably worse. Terrible Haute. It's probably worse.
Oh my gosh.
But Lafayette was just like, what
These
am I doing?
opinions are not necessarily shared by Jed Topper or White House customer.
Exactly. Sorry, Terre Haute people or Lafayette people. So I worked in the events office at Purdue.
Okay.
So I planned events.
Okay.
And people would get married in the Memorial Union and stuff like that. So I did that. And then when we moved back to my hometown, because he went back to work for Sunoco, that's when I started dabbling in photography.
Dabbling?
At that time we had kids and I wanted...
So what year's this?
Well, let's see. Jack was born in 2003.
Okay, did you start dabbling digitally or did you?
No, digitally. So it's probably a little later than 2003. So he was probably 2 or 3 maybe when I actually started.
Okay. So you never dabbled with film?
No, which is funny because people ask me, did I study in school, which would have been film?
Right.
And I always laugh because here's the story. I actually looked into it as a elective or minor or something.
Right.
But apparently the professor was hard, and we go back to the tailgating and the football, and you realize I don't want to have a hard class, so I didn't take it.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I swear.
Photography was a difficult one?
The professor was supposedly really hard and like really mean, and I was like, I don't want to deal with that.
Nobody wants a mean professor.
I know, right? So I was like, no, forget it. So
that's why I just didn't even get through college. I thought they were all mean.
They were all mean. No.
So you dabble with digital.
So yes, when I started, my kids were little, and I tell you, the funny thing is an old neighbor of mine, I had seen that she had started dabbling, and I thought, oh, well, that's kind of a good idea. So then I started, and I'll never forget, when my kids were really little, I used to go to my in-laws' house quite a bit because they weren't in school, and my in-laws would want to see them, and I could easily go because I wasn't working, and they would literally watch my kids while I looked on the computer and tried to teach myself photography.
So you were learning, right?
So I was learning, yeah. So I would, Google it or ask other photographers, and didn't really know where I was going to go with it. I mean, at the time, I would shoot anything. I mean, kids were easy because I had kids.
Right.
I mean, not easy, but they came to me easily because all my friends had kids.
Sure.
So that's how I started.
Yeah.
And I did try weddings, but I quickly learned that I at the time didn't want to be away from the kids all day on Saturdays because that's when they would do sports and things like that when they were little. And then I also, with weddings, you realize the fun stuff is up until the reception. Then everybody's drunk and you're stuck taking the photos that Uncle Bob could take,
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know about that.
And these days he does.
Right, exactly.
Right. There's like 7 Uncle Bobs at
every wedding with their iPhones.
Right.
They're like perfecting iPhone photography.
And Uncle Bob gets to have a good time and photograph.
Right. And I don't get to have the good time. Right. Yeah, exactly. So I dabbled in all that. And then for a long time I did families, kids and families, preschool photos, all that stuff. And then I am the kind of person that does not like to compete with people.
Is that right?
Yes. So I like to remove myself from any competition I can possibly see. So nobody was doing senior photography, but everybody else was doing everything else.
Okay.
And, there was a million photographers in my town, just like there are in every town. And they were all doing weddings and kids and families. And I'm like, all right, what are they not doing?
So
and
you saw it as an opportunity to create a market.
Yeah, and there was zero market at the time.
Is that right?
Yep.
But so this is what I've been told and experienced to some degree is on the coasts, senior photography isn't generally as big of a deal.
It is not.
Not historically, anyway.
Right, you're right. I mean, when I started, nobody knew what senior photography was. They thought the yearbook photo was their senior photos.
That's what I've been told many times.
Yes, and it is that way in different parts of the country. I mean, there are certain parts of the country where senior photography is huge because they can put whatever photo they want in the yearbook, which means they have to go hire a photographer. So those people have a certain window of time. Like those photographers have a certain window that they have to. They have their clients calling them to take the photos to submit to the yearbook. Where I live, you have to use the Life Touch or one of those type companies that come to the school, usually in July before your senior year starts. And you wear the black drape if you're a girl, you wear the fake tux if you're a boy.
Right.
And so when I started, that was the only form of quote unquote senior photography in my area.
So you created a market.
Yes.
How did you do that?
I know, that's funny. How did I do it? I mean, it's a lot of different things. It's a lot of persistence. It's a lot of just putting out there what I wanted to do, finding people to model for me so that I could produce this content that showed people the difference.
You have to build the foundation for the whole thing because it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
And you have to change people's perceptions.
Yes. You have to be able to show them the difference.
Right.
Literally show them your posed blue backdrop, black drape photo versus your outdoor, wear whatever you want, show your personality photo. And so for years, I just kept doing it. I mean, and I'm talking, I'd have 2 or 3 clients, but I'd have to just keep at it and keep at it.
Because you're in a position where you're really having to show people that you want this.
Yes.
This is something you want.
Yes.
And you don't even know that you want it. But
exactly.
You do.
Exactly. Because they're going to have to pay for both.
Right.
So you really have to show them why they also need to pay for yours.
Right.
Right.
And lots for yours.
Right. And absolutely. Because, who wants to do it for free?
Did you run into a lot of resistance at the beginning? Like, were there people just saying, what are you doing?
In the beginning, I would only have like 1 or 2 clients, which was very frustrating.
In a season,
yes,
a whole year.
In a season, absolutely. Right. So I'd keep doing families,
Right.
But little by little, the more models that I started a rep team, and in my first rep team, I only had 4 people.
Right.
So that, but then that would keep getting the word out. You keep putting it out there. At the time, I think Facebook was the only thing that anybody was using, but you keep doing it. You talk to your friends who maybe have kids that are that age, or you find, I remember having a friend whose son at the time was not a senior, but he ran track for the high school team. Mm-hmm. He was actually in middle school at the time. Mm-hmm. And I remember calling her and saying, okay, who's on his team? What girls are on his team that are this age? And I remember I started out with like 10th graders because that's all I could get.
Right.
But I took photos of them to produce photos of that genre.
Right.
Like they don't have to be true seniors to produce that kind of content.
Yeah, not to market what you're doing.
Exactly. Sure. So I started out with 3 girls that were on the track team that this kid knew. And they were sophomores at the time. And
so you had like 2 or 3 degrees of separation between them. You didn't. It's not like you knew these kids. You were tight with these kids, but you got your foot in the door.
Right. I thought about how can I get my foot in the door, and the way I got my foot in the door was I knew a mom friend of mine had a son that ran track for the high school team. He was only in 7th grade at the time.
And so during this process, so this is what's been coming up in conversations that I've been having lately, and in my mind in general, with how things have changed and are changing. Were you doing something else at the time for income, or were you as well, or were you
still doing families?
Okay, so you were still shooting families, and that was bringing in income, so that you were in a position to sort of stick your neck out a little bit.
Exactly. Right. And I mean, at the time, I still think I was second shooting weddings just for money. Right. Not that I really.
So you were doing other things. This is what I'm bringing up because a lot of people I hear a lot of people saying, oh, you can't survive just doing this anymore. And there's a lot of people that are like, oh, well, her husband has a full-time job, so they don't
Well, and
really
he
need
did.
the money type of thing.
Right.
So your husband did, but what
Yes.
I'm saying is like even today,
Yes.
you can't, it's not like someone can just go out and make something happen overnight.
Oh, no, this took years.
Right.
And yeah, I couldn't have done it had I not kept supplementing it with families and my
Right.
husband having a job
Right. And second
you know,
shooting weddings.
And second
Like,
shooting weddings.
you
Yeah.
were busy.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I kept myself busy.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily put it out there that I was, I mean, you know, when it comes to social media, when you want to specialize in seniors, I'm putting senior content out there.
Right.
But I'm supplementing that with families. And to this day, I still do families.
Right.
Not a lot.
Right.
But every fall, I do family mini sessions for clients that I've had for years because
Right.
they always want that Christmas card photo.
Right.
So I still do those.
Yes.
Yeah.
How often does the senior shoot transition into a family shoot? Like, do you
Sometimes.
purposefully funnel that or try to funnel that?
Well, and what you can do, especially if that's something you want to do as a photographer, is remind families of seniors that a really great time to have a family photo done is before that child leaves the nest, because
Right.
once they leave the nest, it's a little harder to get. I mean, not that they're not going to see you and they're not going to come home and visit, but it's just a different dynamic once they move out of your home. So to
Tremendously
get that family photo.
Right. And you're kind of commemorating that moment in time and everything that was before, because
Right.
after that, everything's different.
It's just different,
And it's
right.
never going to be that way again.
No, never.
Right.
Absolutely. So sometimes they will book their own family session. Sometimes I'll have clients that will say, can we come at the end of the girls' senior session for the last, 10, 20 minutes and
Yeah.
get a family photo? And I totally do that. I
Right.
mean, that's totally fine. I'm already out there. Why not?
Right. And
You know?
are you still second shooting weddings?
No, I quit that. Yeah. I did it longer than, like, when I first did it because I wanted to see if I wanted to do weddings. And I met one of my best photographer friends that way. And so for a long time, I did it because I was her friend.
Right.
And it gave me money, but I knew at that point I was never going to do weddings.
Right.
But I just kept doing it because I didn't want to disappoint her.
Well,
You know
you're
what I mean?
helping
Type thing.
her, you're
Yeah, I was
making a
helping
little
her. And it was
money.
fun because we're friends,
Right.
you know?
Well, then you don't have the responsibility isn't really resting on your
listen,
shoulders.
The few times I've done a wedding, wow, you want to talk about, I mean, there is no redo of that bad boy.
No, that's it, man.
You know? Yeah. I mean, a senior session you can redo if you screw up. Or if it rains or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
something goes wrong. You just,
Yeah.
we'll just do it next Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, for a long time I did still second shoot, but yeah, I don't miss that though, I will say.
And so then you feel as though that you've created this market, and then now over the last, well, let's say 5 or 6 years in particular, with the way things have gone in the industry, have you seen competition show up? Because you said you
Yes.
didn't want to be competitive.
Right.
But
right.
that surely isn't the case today.
Well, today more and more photographers are now shooting everything, including seniors, because
Yeah.
I opened the market for them.
Right. So how's that worked out for you?
Well, to be honest, it's not terrible yet because I guess I started so much earlier than all of them.
You were first.
I was first, and
Yeah.
so I'm currently, and that's not to say it won't change, but currently I'm still probably the one that most people seek, unless they're price shopping.
Right. And do you
Which I
have
don't
the-
want anyway.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Like, if someone calls and they're price shopping, do you think to yourself, they're not my client anyway?
Yeah, no, if they're not going to pay me, I'm not doing it. So
Right.
if they want somebody cheaper, they do need to go to one of these other people that do a little bit of everything.
Right.
I've yet to see, let me knock on some wood here,
Yeah.
but I've yet to see somebody compete with me on that level where it's
Right.
strictly seniors.
Right. Right. That doesn't exist yet.
But I'm also trying not to pay it too much attention because I don't want it in my head.
Right.
So there could be somebody, I just don't want to know about it.
Talk about that a little bit, things getting in your head.
Well, yeah, you can go down a rabbit hole real quick. And, you can, everybody, no matter what level you're on, you can get wrapped up in, oh gosh, that girl or that boy or that photographer or whatever looks like they're doing a better job because everything looks great on social media.
Right. Right.
So I tend not to follow too many people in my own area. And that's not because I don't support them. I wish everybody well. I just
Right.
don't want to I know how I handle things. And I know I can get in my own head about it.
Yep.
And I just would prefer to be in my own lane and worry about myself.
So your confidence can get rocked a little
Oh,
bit.
it can totally get rocked. Absolutely. I mean, listen, I'm not the most talented photographer by any means in my area, hands down. I
Really?
mean, I'll be the first to tell you. I
Okay.
probably am not technically
Well, okay.
great. I mean, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I can market the hell out of some stuff.
Right.
And
you
that
offer a great experience.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And again, I mean, you know, I will say being the only one to do it at the time, while it was hard,
Right.
it put me in a different lane probably.
Right. Well, your brand is such that people probably think of you before they think of
Right. They're going to think of me first
Others.
if they're
Right.
thinking of senior photography for sure.
How do you, moving forward, how do you maintain that?
I mean, I think you have to maintain that experience. I think you have to maintain that level of, I don't know how to say, I don't want this to seem like cocky or anything, but you have to maintain that level of, if I'm going to do it, I want that photographer. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and I just keep that whole thing with my reps, with my models, you know, making sure that I'm getting the best models out there. I mean, I have so many people apply to be a model now. When I started, it was 4 people that I had to beg to do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think it's just constantly, you know, putting out this my experience is the best
Right.
type thing.
So it's confidence.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of goes.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to what we were just saying. Like you legitimately need to stay away from things that are going to shake your confidence,
Right.
because confidence is so important.
Absolutely. And I mean, and confidence in a way that you know what you're good at. I'm not going to, you
Right.
put me up against somebody that's technically correct in a photo. No, I have zero confidence.
Right.
But I have confidence in what I've been able to accomplish thus
Right.
far. And I will say it's probably a lot of working really hard for the time frame I have. This may not last forever. You know what I mean? Like sooner or later, somebody may do a better job than me.
So you feel as though you got to strike while the iron's
Absolutely.
hot and get after it now.
Get after it. And frankly, I mean, I don't know that I want to do it forever.
Yeah.
So I want to do it hard and good right now.
Right.
And then, you know, maybe I'll move on to something else. I mean, I have a ton of interest. So
Talk a little bit about, in that vein, about seniorology and Conference 12, because, you know, not most photographers don't found organizations like that or
Right.
run organizations like that.
yes. And
So-
that probably goes a little bit back to my journalism background. What happened was when I first started back before I was doing seniors, when I was doing a little bit of everything, I stumbled across a blog called The Savvy Photographer.
Oh, I remember that.
Do you remember that?
Is
Yeah.
that still around?
No, I don't think so.
I remember that.
But it was great. And
Yes.
she, you know, she was awesome. And Marsha was super nice. And I reached out to her.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, hey, I have a journalism degree. I like to write. Do you ever need somebody to help you write stuff?
Like contributors.
Right, contributors. And she said yes. And so she would send me people she wanted me to interview.
Oh, is that right?
And it was all genres.
Yeah.
And so I would contact the person that she sent me and I would interview them. And I had a set of questions and I'd write the post.
Okay.
And so through that, I sort of got my feet wet in the whole blogging world. And again, it goes back to the realizing there wasn't something at the time.
Right.
And at the time, there was The Savvy Photographer and there were these like wedding blogs, like
Right.
Green Wedding Shoes and
Sure.
all those things. And I thought, well, why isn't there one for seniors?
Yeah.
There wasn't a single one at the time.
Right.
And so, you know, I did that for her for a little while and then thought, okay, maybe I can do my own
your own.
version
Yeah.
that doesn't compete with her. Cause I mean,
Right.
I did never want to.
You were niched
Yeah. Yeah.
in seniors.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And I thought at the time, at this point, I had realized I really wanted to do seniors. I didn't know a lot about seniors. So I thought, well, why can't I start a blog and learn as I
Right.
share with others?
Interesting.
Yeah. So I did. I started Seniorology.
And that was born.
And that was born. And it more quickly turned into education than I even had realized.
Right.
Like I started just thinking one person would read the blog. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
like my mom might read it and she
Right.
didn't even read it. So, you know. She's like, "What's a blog? I don't even know what a blog is. What are you What are you saying? What blog? I don't know." Anyway,
I like it.
So
the one person you thought was going to read it didn't even read it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but I would interview at the time people like Michelle Moore was pretty big.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who else. Sarah Lane, Meg Borders at the time. And I just would reach out to them and interview them. It was all very interview style.
Yeah.
I had a set list of questions. What equipment do you use?
Right.
Like, things like that I thought people would want to know.
Yeah.
And it quickly turned into the small workshops called Seniorology Tour.
Right.
Because I started the blog and I started the blog in August and had the very first Seniorology Tour in April later that following year. 6 months later, basically.
Yeah.
Because I just realized real quickly, if I don't do this, somebody else is going to.
Do you still use a blog as kind of like, I've been told that it's a really good idea to use a blog as kind of like the center of your wheel regarding content that you publish?
Yes, and it would be a really good idea. But I went through I know this is a story. Listen, y'all. I mean, this just proves that anything can happen all the time. But I hired I thought at the time Seniorology needed a new look. Mm-hmm. And so I hired a web designer that was too good to be true. And it just put me in a deep hole of trying to the website wasn't working. So I thought, okay, I can't handle trying to get him to do the website and blogging every day and all this. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna take a little break from blogging and try to get this website. Well, that turned into a long time of not blogging.
Yeah.
So Seniorology has probably taken a tiny bit of a hit because I personally was floundering with what do people want to hear from Seniorology? Mm-hmm. When it began, it was interview style and it was sharing people's work. Mm-hmm. I don't know nowadays if it's as exciting to have your work shared.
Right.
So
because there's stuff like Instagram.
Exactly. Right. So that played into it. It was harder and harder to find new people to interview.
Right.
And then the website thing happened. Mm-hmm. So I am in a spot now where I'm trying to figure out what do people want from Seniorology.
Sure.
I have no idea. I don't know if they just want strictly education. I don't know if they want to hear from me because Seniorology was never me.
Right. Right.
So, but in a sense, I'm like, I do know stuff. I do have plenty to share.
I love that.
You know what I mean? Like,
that's great.
But will anybody read it? I don't know. I mean, it goes back to the confidence.
I mean,
thing.
it would be difficult to find yourself in a position where you were legitimately competing with Instagram.
Right.
They're big.
They're big. Yeah, they're big.
They have pretty good reach.
Yeah. And so it's just trying to figure out the ebbs and flows of the business.
Sure.
When it first started, it was super popular and everybody wanted to be featured.
Right.
But then slowly but surely more blogs showed up.
Right.
And they were doing the same sort of thing, which is fine. And so people wanted to be featured on those. And then, it kind of just got less. It was easier to get featured, less of a reward to get featured, I guess.
Well, would you consider, so it was sort of a result of what you were doing initially in creating the market for seniors, right? Is it just another, looking back even in hindsight, is it just another part of the evolution of the process?
Yes.
So like, I did this and it was really helpful and really successful, and that was the time for that. And so now it's almost like you constantly have to look to what's next.
Exactly. And that is no matter what you're doing. As a photographer, you also have to do that.
Right.
Because, especially in the senior world, they're teenagers. They want to know what's next.
Yeah.
They are doing what's next.
Right.
So, yes, it's a matter of constantly going with what you can maybe foresee happening. Yeah. And Seniorology right now is just in a moment where I'm trying to figure out what that next thing is.
Right.
So lately I've been concentrating a little bit more on my own personal business. Sure. But I'm trying to figure out where Seniorology goes next. But I do love the education portion of it.
Sure.
So I always want that to be
the core.
Yeah. And putting on these conferences, I've even seen lulls in-person conferences, workshops, etc.
Sure.
Because it's harder and harder for people to leave their families, their business. I get it.
Yeah.
But I do think it's such an important part of this business. And I don't care what level you are. Even I learned something from these conferences that I personally put on every single time.
Every time.
Because there's just nothing like that personal connection to other people doing the same thing or trying to do the same thing as you.
Right.
And you learn from every attendee because they all have different stories. You learn from every speaker because they all have different stories. Everybody's at a different level or different point in their business, and everybody can learn from each other. And honestly, just having the simple fact of knowing there are other people like you trying to do the same thing as you is a huge thing for your business. It's a huge thing.
That can be a confidence builder in and of itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I've heard from attendees, you come to conferences and you realize, okay, yeah, I knew this.
Right.
But it validates you.
Right.
So maybe you don't learn the most earth-shattering thing in the world, but you learn that you're doing the right thing.
Right.
You learn that you're going in the right direction.
Right.
Yeah.
Validation, I like that. And sometimes it's just that little push that you need, or sometimes it's just a little nugget that maybe you knew, but then you go back and then you're motivated to actually implement something, and it turns into something amazing. I mean, but you don't know if you don't come, you don't know. If you don't show up,
and here's the other thing. You
know.
could tell somebody the exact same thing I could tell somebody. It's going to resonate different from you than it does from me.
Right.
And it may take you telling them to actually get them to do something. Do you know what I mean?
That happens every so often with my wife and I. I don't know if you have the same thing,
Exactly.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Who the information is coming from is
a
big deal.
My husband likes to, I tell him something, and then, I don't know, a day or two later, he thinks of it on his own. Oh yeah, honey.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You came up with that idea.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, good job. Hey, that's a really good idea.
That's a really good idea, honey. Yes, way to go.
Hey, sometimes you use that as a strategy. To try to,
honey, I work that like nobody. I know it by now, so I totally work it.
Oh, good for you. Hey, where can people find you? Where are you at on the interwebs?
Okay, so personal business is Leslie Kerrigan Photo on Instagram, and Kerrigan is Kerrigan. Facebook is Leslie Kerrigan Photography. Seniorology is with an IE on the end, not a Y.
That's important to know.
So that's on Instagram. There is a private Facebook community for senior photographers through Seniorology. So if you're looking for a small group that, offers feedback or
you can ask to join.
Connects. Yep,
right?
Yep. You just send me a request to join. The website, seniorology.com. Conference 12 does have its own website, but it's, specific to the conference and where we're going to be next. Instagram is Conference 12, all spelled out.
What about your business website?
LeslieKerriganPhotography.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like 70 places.
70 places, pretty much. This is easy to remember,
70,
right? You
70 or 80 places where
right.
people can find
it's
you.
Fine.
You're all over the place.
I even have an Instagram for my dog and my house in case you want those.
Really? Okay. Hey, you're out there.
I'm out there.
That's important.
Let me tell you, keeping up with 50 different Instagram accounts is fun.
Okay. That's a whole other podcast.
I know, right?
Hey, I appreciate you taking the time to join me on this.
Absolutely.
This was really great. And I'm excited to see what the rest of the conference holds for us here in Chicago, Illinois. Thanks for your time.
Sure. Thank you.